The math on this job doesn't work in your favor. In Iraq, IEDs killed 63% of coalition troops. Afghanistan, over 66%. That means EOD techs weren't dealing with occasional threats. They were responding to bombs multiple times a day, every single day, roadside devices hidden in trash piles, cars rigged to explode, entire buildings wired to collapse. The danger wasn't theoretical, it was constant. Here's the thing about bomb disposal that movies never show. It's slow, painfully slow. You're not cutting a red wire with 10 seconds left on a timer. You're spending hours using robots and tools to investigate something that could detonate at any moment. And despite all that caution, despite every precaution in the book, EOD techs still get hurt. Since 2001, at least 131 have been killed in action. Another 250 suffered catastrophic injuries, lost limbs, blindness, paralysis, burns that changed their lives forever. Hundreds more walked away with concussions and hearing damage that never fully heals. Sometimes the protective gear helps. That 80-pound bomb suit can shield you from shrapnel and blast pressure, but it also turns you into a slow-moving oven, dripping sweat in 120-degree heat, barely able to move your arms. And honestly, there are moments when the suit doesn't matter. When a Marine stepped on a landmine in Afghanistan, EOD. Sergeant Michael Gaddis had to crawl into that same minefield immediately to reach the wounded. The ground was baked hard as concrete, so metal detectors were useless. He probed forward with a knife, inch by inch on his stomach, knowing any pressure could trigger another blast. That's the reality. No time for robots. No time for suits. Just you, the device, and whatever training you can pull. From memory while your heart pounds in your ears. Air support sounds clean from a distance. A radio call, a few minutes of waiting, then precision strikes that turn the tide. But standing where a JTAC stands? That's a different story. You're close enough to hear the enemy shouting. Close enough to smell burning diesel and dust in your lungs. And you're the one person responsible for making sure the bombs, falling from 20,000 feet, don't land on your own team. One wrong digit in those coordinates, one misread of the terrain, and friendly troops die. That weight doesn't leave your chest, even after the mission ends. What makes it worse is how exposed you are. Enemy forces know what JTACs do. They know that voice on the radio is the reason their positions keep getting vaporized. So they hunt for you ambushes, sniper fire, IEDs planted along likely routes. JTACs are high-value targets because taking one out means cutting off the air support that's keeping ground forces alive. You're not tucked safely behind lines. You're forward, sometimes within sight of enemy positions because that's the only way to call accurate strikes when friendlies and hostiles are dangerously close. Then there's the mental toll. You're watching the battle through binoculars, tracking movement, calculating distances in your head while bullets crack past. You call the 9 line, confirm the target, and wait. Those seconds between your call and impact stretch forever. And if something goes wrong, if the pilot misunderstands, if the intel was bad, if civilians were in a building you couldn't see, you carry that JTACs from Mosul and the anti-ISIS campaigns still talk about missions where everything blurred together. Smoke, screaming, radios crackling with 3 different voices at once. You make the call anyway because hesitation costs lives too. That's the impossible part. Every choice has consequences and you live with all of them. The dog goes first, always. That's the arrangement, and every handler knows it when they sign up. Your partner, the one who sleeps next to your cot, who eats before you do, who you've spent thousands of hours training with, walks point on every patrol. They're out front sniffing for explosives, tracking threats, doing the job that puts them directly in the kill zone. And you're right behind them, leash in hand, watching their ears and tail for signals while scanning for ambushes. The injury rate for handlers sits at over 14,000 per 10,000 person years, second highest in the entire military. That's not an accident. IEDs were the #1 killer in Iraq and Afghanistan, responsible for 75% of casualties. Dogs can smell them. They catch traces of explosives humans and machines miss completely. So units refuse to move without a K9 team, which sounds like respect until you realize what it actually means. You and your dog are now essential. And being essential makes you a target. Enemy fighters know that taking out the dog handler cripples the patrol. They set up ambushes specifically for K9 teams. They wait for that first alert, then open fire. Between 2001 and 2013, at least 92 military working dogs were killed in combat. Gunshots, explosions. Some handlers were killed alongside their dogs, like Sergeant Aaron Blastio and his dog Hunter in 2011, both gone in the same blast. There's a memorial wall with their names side by side because that's how they served. Inseparable. One handler described watching his dog get hit by an IED while still connected by the leash. The explosion took the dog instantly. He felt the jolt through the line before he even processed what happened. That kind of loss doesn't fade. You don't just lose a teammate. You lose the one thing that trusted you completely, followed every command, and never questioned walking into danger first. Someone goes down and the world narrows to one word: Doc. It doesn't matter if rounds are still snapping overhead or if the position is completely exposed. The medic moves. Not because they're fearless, but because waiting means watching someone die. Combat medics and Navy corpsmen have injury rates that hit 15 per 1,000 per day during heavy fighting, higher than almost anyone else on the battlefield. That's what happens when your job is running toward gunfire instead of away from it. Here's the brutal reality: 87% of combat deaths happen before anyone reaches a hospital. That means the medic kneeling in the dust with a tourniquet and a prayer is often the only chance. Up to 24% of battlefield deaths are survivable if treatment happens fast enough. Hemorrhage is the killer. You've got minutes, sometimes less, to stop the bleeding, secure an airway, and keep someone conscious long enough for evac, and you're doing it with whatever supplies you crammed into your pack that morning, under fire while your hands shake and someone's screaming in your ear. The weight alone is crushing. Medical gear, personal weapon, ammo, water. Medics carry everything everyone else does, plus an extra 40 pounds of trauma supplies. Then they're expected to work for hours without backup. One medic in Syria kept 3 wounded soldiers alive for 8 hours waiting for airlift. 2 IVs. Tourniquets ripped from his own kit. No resupply. Just him and the clock. Another corpsman in Marja dragged a Marine 30 meters across open ground while taking shrapnel in his own leg. He didn't stop until his guy was behind cover. That's not training. That's instinct overriding every survival mechanism your brain has. The ones who make it home carry a different kind of wound. They remember faces, the ones they saved and the ones they couldn't. They replay those moments, wondering if they moved faster, applied pressure differently, called for evac sooner. PTSD rates among combat medics are staggering, and it's not hard to see why. You're holding someone's life in your hands, literally, and sometimes it slips through anyway. In Vietnam, door gunners had a life expectancy measured in minutes once they entered a hot LZ. Not hours, minutes. Over 10% of all casualties in that war were helicopter crew, and most of them were gunners. That's what happens when you're strapped into an open doorway with nothing but a lap belt between you and a 1,500-foot drop, flying straight into enemy fire. You're a silhouette against the sky. Easy to spot, easy to target, and enemy forces knew it. They'd position heavy machine guns on ridgelines specifically to create crossfires, waiting for choppers to descend. The goal wasn't just to hit the bird, it was to hit the fuel line, the ammo, or the gunner, keeping them suppressed. Protection? Barely any. The helicopter's skin is aluminum. Bullets punch through like paper. Gunners had to lean out of the aircraft to get effective angles on ground threats, which meant exposing their entire upper body, arms, torso, head, all vulnerable. Shrapnel from near-miss RPGs would shred anything in range. Some birds came back so riddled with holes you could see daylight through the fuselage. Crews would count dozens of impacts after a single mission, and somehow everyone still made it back. Other times they didn't. What made it worse was the timing. Gunners are most critical during insertion and extraction, the exact moments when the helicopter is slowest, lowest, and most exposed. Ground troops are counting on you to keep enemy heads down while they jump out or climb aboard. If you stop firing, even for a second, someone on the ground pays for it. So gunners kept shooting even when their aircraft was already going down. There are documented cases of gunners continuing to lay suppressive fire after crash landings, protecting their injured pilots and wounded passengers until rescue arrived or the enemy was driven back. That level of commitment in a position where survival odds were already stacked against you is hard to wrap your head around. But that was the job. Fly in, suppress cover, repeat until you couldn't anymore. Forget the movies where engineers show up after the shooting stops. That's not how it works. Combat engineers are in the thick of it, setting charges on compound walls while rounds snap overhead, probing dirt roads for pressure plates that could vaporize a convoy, and building fighting positions in places where the enemy has clear line of sight. In Ramadi, a team had to place C4 on a reinforced door. While their squad returned fire from both sides, they blew the breach, pushed through the smoke, and pulled 3 hostages out before the structure collapsed. That's the tempo. No time to second guess. The Army has a dark joke about the 12B MOS code for combat engineers. Go 12B if you want to die. It's not funny because it's clever. It's funny because it's true. Engineers in Iraq and Afghanistan faced death rates more than 4 times higher than those stationed back home. Most of those deaths came from explosions. IEDs, booby traps, unstable demo charges. You're the one walking point with a metal detector, sweeping for buried devices that were specifically designed to kill the first person who finds them. One Marine engineer spent over 6 hours clearing a path to a downed Black Hawk in blistering heat, flagging safe zones inch by inch until he passed out from exhaustion. His markers saved the flight crew. The gear alone is exhausting. Explosives, detectors, breaching tools, personal weapon, body armor, easily over 100 pounds in full kit. And you're hauling that through mud, sand, or rubble while scanning for wires, listening for radio chatter, and watching for movement. One missed tripwire ends you and everyone behind you. The pressure doesn't let up because the mission can't wait. A collapsed bridge? You're building a bypass? A locked gate blocking the objective? You're blowing it open. The entire operation hinges on what you can rig, clear, or construct in the next 30 minutes. No room for error, no second chances. You don't get a second drop. Pathfinders hit the ground first, sometimes hours before anyone else, to mark landing zones in enemy territory. No backup, no extraction plan if things fall apart. Just a small team with radios, beacons, and the knowledge that if they mess up the coordinates or miss enemy positions, the entire force coming behind them lands in a killing field. The margin isn't just thin, it's non-existent. In Vietnam, one Pathfinder team misjudged wind drift during their jump and came down inside an NVA-controlled area. 2 survivors held position in the trees for 18 hours, whispering over radio, waiting for the main assault to reach them. They couldn't move, couldn't fire without giving away their location. Just waited. The isolation is the hardest part. Most missions, if something goes sideways, you call for help. Pathfinders don't have that option. They're the help. If they get compromised, the mission either shifts or collapses entirely. Their job is to assess the LZ, confirm it's viable, set up navigation aids, and relay intel back while staying invisible. That means lying in brush or crouching behind terrain for hours, scanning for patrols, listening for movement, all while prepping gear to guide in helicopters that'll be arriving at high speed in total darkness. Even with modern tech, GPS, laser rangefinders, encrypted comms, things break. Batteries die, satellites lose signal. Weather changes faster than forecasts predict. When that happens, Pathfinders fall back on old-school skills. Reading terrain by moonlight, estimating distance by sound, trusting gut instinct about whether a zone is safe. And when birds start inbound, there's no time to second-guess. They either commit to the call or wave off the entire insertion. Either way, lives depend on that split-second decision. The ones who get it right are rarely mentioned. The ones who get it wrong don't get a chance to explain. When everyone else pulls back, PJs go in. Their motto isn't just words. That others may live means jumping from altitudes that require oxygen masks, swimming through freezing surf with full combat load, or fast roping onto mountainsides while taking fire. These aren't standard medics. They're operators who happen to save lives instead of take them. During Operation Anaconda, a team rappelled onto an exposed Afghan ridge under direct enemy contact to reach wounded SEALs. They stabilized gunshot wounds and applied tourniquets with one hand while returning suppressive fire with the other. Then they carried the casualties down on foot. No airlift, no quick exit, just boots, backs, and sheer will. The pipeline to become a PJ takes nearly 2 years, longer than most elite units, because the job demands mastery across multiple domains. Combat medicine, free-fall parachuting combat diving, mountain rescue, survival in every climate. They train for scenarios where everything goes wrong at once. Bad weather, no comms, wounded personnel, and hostile forces closing in. Because that's exactly what they face. In 2011, a PJ was tasked with reaching a downed pilot off the Libyan coast. He jumped from a helicopter into 6-foot swells and swam for 40 minutes in full gear, rifle above water, until he reached shore. Once there, he pulled security over the pilot until extraction arrived. No rest, no complaints, just the job. What sets them apart isn't just the danger, it's the isolation. PJs often drop into areas where conventional rescue can't reach. Remote valleys, open ocean, hostile urban zones. They arrive with whatever fits in their pack and have to improvise the rest. Some missions require dragging injured personnel across miles of rough terrain using makeshift sleds. Others mean performing field surgery in caves with headlamps and limited supplies. And unlike most combat roles, failure isn't an option. Someone called for help. Someone's dying. That's why they're there. The physical toll is brutal. Broken bones, torn ligaments, chronic injuries from high-altitude jumps and heavy carries. But they keep going back because the alternative is leaving someone behind. No badges, no special qualifications printed on a uniform, just a rifle, a rucksack, and the knowledge that when things get ugly, you're the one walking through the door. 1st Infantry riflemen don't parachute from 30,000 feet or defuse bombs with robots. They kick in doors in Fallujah and clear rooms where the enemy is 5 feet away, firing through drywall. They hold ridgelines in Afghanistan for weeks at a time, sleeping in shifts, living on MRES, and walking patrols every day knowing the road might explode under their boots. It's not glamorous. It's grinding. The numbers tell the story. In Afghanistan's Korangal Valley, some rifle squads came home with half their guys missing, killed or too wounded to continue. Fatality rates for frontline infantry hit 19 per 1,000 per year in the worst areas, 4 times higher than support roles. Marines took it even harder, with death rates more than double the next branch, because they were consistently sent to the hottest zones. IEDs caused 3 out of 5 hostile deaths in Iraq. But riflemen also dealt with gunfights at arm's length, ambushes in alleyways, and booby-trapped compounds rigged to collapse. The danger didn't take breaks. The physical toll is relentless. Riflemen carry upwards of 80 pounds on patrol. Ammo, water, radios, body armor, through mountains, deserts, or urban rubble in 110-degree heat. Or freezing rain, sleep deprivation becomes standard. Feet blister and bleed, shoulders bruise from the weight. And when someone gets hit, it's the riflemen who carry them out. No vehicles, no medevac nearby, just grunts hauling a brother through hostile ground because leaving him isn't an option. The bond forms fast under those conditions. You fight for the person next to you, not the mission brief or the flag. That's what keeps squads moving even when the losses stack up. And even after they come home, the danger lingers. Younger infantrymen face elevated risks of accidents, vehicle crashes, substance issues, suicide. The war doesn't always end when the deployment does, but they remain the backbone. Every mission depends on someone willing to walk point, hold ground, and absorb the worst of it. That's the rifleman's job. Unglamorous essential, deadly. The helicopter hovers, the door opens, and before anyone below can even process what's happening, the rescue swimmer is already airborne, dropping into waves that could swallow a car. No tether, no safety net, just them, the ocean, and whoever's drowning. During Hurricane Katrina, one Coast Guard swimmer made trip after trip into flooded neighborhoods, pulling 56 people from rooftops and attics. Some were holding babies. Some were too terrified to let go even after he got them secured. He just kept going back down. Training for this job has a 70% washout rate, and it's easy to see why. Candidates swim 500 yards in under 12 minutes while wearing gear. They tow a 200-pound dummy across a pool, simulating a panicked victim. They dive 25 yards underwater repeatedly without surfacing. And that's just the baseline. The real test comes later. Emergency medical technician certification, advanced cliff and sea cave rescue training, and endless scenarios designed to break you mentally before the ocean gets a chance. Because out there, when rotor wash is blinding you, a debris is smashing into your ribs, and the victim is fighting you out of pure panic, there's no time out. You either handle it or people die. The conditions are brutal by design. Oil slicks make everything slippery. Currents yank you off course. Wreckage from a crashed helicopter or sinking boat can pin you underwater. Cold water saps your strength in minutes, and rescue swimmers work through all of it, sometimes holding someone's head above water for 20 minutes straight while waiting for the hoist to stabilize. If the cable jams or the basket won't drop, they tread water and wait. If they lose their grip on a victim, they dive and find them again. There's no giving up. The mission doesn't end until everyone who can be saved is in the bird or confirmed gone. What sets them apart isn't just physical ability, it's composure. When everything around you is chaos, when the person you're trying to save is thrashing and screaming, you have to stay calm enough to think, assess injuries, secure the harness correctly, signal the hoist operator, all while waves are slamming you and exhaustion is setting in. That mental toughness is why both men and women who make it through hold the same brutal standards. Because when the call comes, burning ship, capsized boat, downed aircraft, there's no margin for weakness. You jump, you swim, you save who you can. That's the job. Lying flat in frozen mud for 2 days straight changes you. Your body goes numb. Your mind starts playing tricks. But you can't move. can't stretch, can't even shift your weight without risking detection. A Marine sniper in Helmand stayed in position for 42 hours waiting for one shot. A mortar team that had been shelling friendlies for days. When he finally took it, the target dropped, and he started crawling out. By the time he reached the rally point, he was barely conscious from dehydration. That's the trade. Patience for lethality. Training alone weeds out most candidates. Army Sniper School runs 7 weeks of relentless fieldcraft. Stalking, camouflage, range estimation, ballistics. You learn to read wind by watching grass blades. You calculate bullet drop in your head while lying on uneven ground. Navy SEAL sniper courses stretch 3 months and deliberately put students under unfair conditions. Shoot in rain, shoot exhausted, shoot while being harassed. Because real missions don't wait for ideal circumstances. The attrition reflects the difficulty. Only those who can blend technical skill with absolute mental control make it through. What civilians don't understand is how much of the job isn't shooting. Snipers are forward observers. They infiltrate deep, sometimes miles ahead of friendly lines, to watch enemy movements and relay intel. They're gathering information, marking positions, and staying invisible for days at a time. The spotter handles calculations, wind speed, humidity, angle compensation, while the shooter stays locked on target. Both roles demand total trust because one error, one distraction, compromises the entire mission. And extraction is often more dangerous than insertion. Once you fire, the enemy knows someone's out there. Getting back means moving through territory that's now actively hunting you. Accuracy isn't optional. Missing doesn't just mean trying again, it means giving away your position, alerting the target, and possibly getting your team killed. That's why snipers wait. They let targets pass if conditions aren't perfect. They endure discomfort that would break most people because rushing a shot is how you fail. The mental discipline required, staying focused through hunger, cold, fatigue, and boredom, is harder than the physical act of shooting. You're alone with your thoughts for hours, sometimes days, knowing that when the moment comes, there's no room for hesitation. One breath, one trigger press, then the hard part, getting out alive. They don't get called for easy jobs. When a situation is too volatile, too sensitive, or too impossible for conventional forces, special operations teams get the nod SEALs. Delta Force, Green Berets, Marine Raiders. These aren't just skilled soldiers, they're problem solvers trained to operate in places where support doesn't exist and failure isn't an option. The Bin Laden raid is the textbook example. Fly undetected into Pakistani airspace, breach a fortified compound in total darkness, neutralize the target, collect intelligence, and get out. All in 38 minutes. No casualties, no mistakes. That level of execution doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of selection processes that last over a year and weed out 80% of candidates before they even begin operational training. Their insertion methods alone carry life-threatening risk. Halo jumps from 25,000 feet in the middle of the night, fast roping from helicopters into confined urban spaces, underwater approaches to hostile shorelines. They're trained for every possible entry because missions don't wait for ideal conditions. And once they're in, there's no guaranteed backup. Small teams operate independently for days or weeks, carrying everything they need and relying on skills most people can't fathom. Demolitions, advanced medicine, foreign languages, surveillance, close quarters combat. It's not enough to be good at one thing. You have to be exceptional at all of them. But elite training doesn't equal immunity. In 2011, a Chinook designated Extortion 17 was shot down in Afghanistan, killing 30 American special operations personnel in a single incident. It remains the deadliest day for U.S. special ops in history. That's the reality. These teams accept missions where enemy forces are entrenched, where the margin for error is microscopic, and where one miscalculation, wrong intel, delayed timing, compromised position, can mean total loss. Operators know this going in. A former SEAL put it plainly. The more dangerous the mission, the calmer they become. Panic isn't something they can afford. What separates them further is the scope of responsibility. They're not just executing tactics, they're managing political consequences. Hostage rescues in foreign embassies can spark international incidents if handled poorly. Raids on high-value targets require balancing lethality with minimizing collateral damage. These aren't firefights in open desert. They're surgical operations in crowded cities, fortified compounds, or underground networks where civilians and combatants are intertwined. Operators need combat instincts, yes, but also judgment and restraint, under conditions most people would consider unmanageable. And they rely heavily on the specialists we've already covered. EOD techs clearing paths, JTACs coordinating strikes, medics stabilizing casualties. Every piece has to work or the mission collapses. That interdependence is what makes special operations both incredibly effective and incredibly vulnerable.